In the second chapter of course 1300, or Access Programming, we like to talk about event-driven programming. So in this section we learn how to create an event procedure. Of course we do that by creating the form object, and then of course we are putting controls on it, and then start doing event-driven programming. And then of course we learn how to respond to a user action programmatically. Sometimes you have multiple objects and you want to control one object from another object. So you have to understand how to refer to those controls within another form or another control. For that scenario, you have to understand the reference objects. In other words, you're referring to someone else's control from one form to the other. Also, you have to be able to do things that you do graphically, programmatically. That means by the time you're going through Access program, you can perhaps open a form or run a query or show a report. You might want to do this programmatically. It means someone clicks on a button and does that instead of really going to that form. So you learn how to work with do command or do CMDs. That's the whole overview of this chapter. But of course, there are so many other things that we need to learn that hopefully we'll discuss them in other modules. So let's get started with basically a background of a class application. In this course, we are working on a particular database. Since you're coming perhaps from different organizations or different companies, and every single one of you might have a different need, Microsoft has come up with one single lab solution. They call it Hansen Brothers. Hansen Brothers is a fictitious business name that they came up with, and they said, you know what, this is a business, and in this business they might need so many different features that many companies are looking forward to have anyways. So let's see what is it that you're going to work with this within the Hansen Brothers. In the next few slides, I show you available tables that you're dealing with within the labs of this course. And then of course after that, we're going to get into the detail of the steps that you need to take in order to complete this solution. At the end of this course, you're basically making that Hansen Brothers Access database. So the requirements for this particular case study is that Hansen Brothers is selling books. So the bookstore owners have requested some new features. Some of these new features require you to work with a form. Basically, you're providing a form to use as an interface for opening reports with a button. That means you need to create a form, click on a button, show a report. That's one of the features that you need to make. And we will do that throughout this course, not necessarily this chapter. Also, you have to have the feature in order to be able to edit and OK buttons of the form book. That means you can modify reports, modify records, and so forth. Also, you need to be able to validate data. You need to check to see if the value that you're retrieving from a user is the actual value that you're expecting. And also, you need to be able to do the error trapping. You don't want to have your application to fade away or fail on a user's mistake. You want to make it professional. Also, you need to create an order system in order to sell books, as well as a splash screen for commercial purposes. As soon as someone starts the application, it pops up with a small little screen and talks about your company, maybe your company's logo, and that's it. And then you're going to go through the actual program. So we will do this throughout the rest of the chapters. There are 8 chapters that we will complete what we are trying to achieve in here. So we will take our time and take every single step at a time. Let's first start with the database design. As you know, Microsoft has already created the database tables for us. All we need to do is to work with the existing database objects and create a program for it. If you are interested in order to understand how to design tables, how to create tables, what's the best way in order to create a good database table design, you need to take other courses like course 1539, which is Fundamentals of Access Programming, which teaches you how to design the database. In this class, we assume you already have that done. That's why we are learning how to program it. So I would recommend that you should take 1539 class just in case you wanted to go ahead and design the tables, design the forms, and so forth. But here, all we want to do, just have a quick overview of available tables, part of the Hansen Brothers table database that we have part of the CD. And basically, let's go through the overview of them. You have a books table that contains book information. You have the category, which contains the category name. One category can be associated with many books. As you see, there is a relationship, one-to-many, between categories and books. You got customers, which contains customer information, orders, which contains information about the order that the customer can place, and you have orders hold, which is like a back order. Temporarily, it stores information about the books a customer wants, but you don't have it in your inventory, perhaps. And not to mention that since you're dealing with books, you might need to understand who is publishing it. So you need publishers table. As you see on this slide, they show basically the relationship between the tables. As you see in here in this particular slide, category and books, they have one-to-many relationship. One category can have many different books, like for example, love storybooks. There might be thousands of them. Technical books, novel, or anything you name it. Each category can have many books. And then of course, each publisher can publish many different books. As you see, there is a one-to-many relationship between publisher and books. Not to mention that each book might be placed in many different orders. You know, some people can place different books inside of a specific order. Or, for example, you and I can buy the same book. So, as you see, each book might be placed in different orders. And of course, each order is being placed by a specific customer. Each customer can place many different orders. How many times has it happened that they have bought many different books? Or many collections of different books? And then, of course, not to mention that you have the orders hold, which gets the information of you, gets the information of a particular book that you want to buy, and saves it temporarily. In other words, you're reserving a request. You say that, you know, I want to buy this book, but they don't have it, so they order it for you. So this is what we have. But what we want to do is create a program for this database with all those requirements that I talked about. Create a form with a button on it that shows the report, do the validation, and the rest of it that we have already talked about. So let's first talk about event-driven programming. Consider your phone. You're receiving a phone call, and then you pick up the phone and answer it. You're not picking up the phone and checking to see if someone is calling you every few seconds, right? So event occurs, and based on that event, you take an action. That means you're responding to an action that has happened. Someone has called you, you're answering it. The same story is true about the programming in Access. You have to wait for a user action before you take any action. So let's take a look at event-driven programming for a second and compare it with the old ways of doing programming. If you have been doing programming in the past, in 20 years ago or 10 years ago, you remember the way we used to do programming. Procedural programming. As a programmer, you had to start from one point and end to the other point. And then think about all possible actions that the user might have, and then based on that, jump to a specific location. So if you go back and take a look at some of the applications that have been written 20, 25 years ago, you realize that there's a huge list of codes that have been written with lots of jumping, looping, and so forth. Based on this condition, jump over here. Based on that condition, jump over there. The problem with the procedural programming was huge. You had to have lots of chunk of memory available to load the application. The problem with that was maintainability. Many of the codes perhaps was not ever being executed based on the user action. And some of the actions you never anticipated. So you need to go and modify them and recompile them, redistribute them, and so forth. So the concept of enterprise technology came along, and they have distributed applications now, they have event-driven applications now that you really don't load that portion yet unless someone needs it. At the same time, you're categorizing it, you're organizing it, and so forth. So let's take a look at this video, part of your CD, and see the difference between procedural programming and event-driven programming.